It is the morning of January 16th, 1979, and the Shah of Iran is leaving his country for the last time. At Tehran's Mehrabad airport, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi walks toward a sky-blue Boeing 707 he will pilot himself. His wife, Empress Farah, walks beside him, tears streaming down her face. Two royal guards fall to their knees, trying to kiss the Shah's feet. He tells them to stand. They lift a copy of the Quran over his head as a canopy, while the imperial couple mounts the ramp. "I am very tired," the Shah says to the few officials gathered on the tarmac. No crowds, no ceremony, no farewell address to the nation. The man who called himself King of Kings, Light of the Aryans, Shadow of the Almighty, is slipping out of his own country like a fugitive. He carries a small box of Iranian soil with him. He will never set foot in Iran again. Within hours, millions of Iranians pour into the streets. Car horns blare. Strangers embrace. Bakers give away free cakes. People sprinkle each other with rose water. Statues of the Shah are pulled down. His portrait is cut out of banknotes. In Paris, Ayatollah Khomeini, the exiled cleric who had orchestrated the revolution from afar, congratulates the Iranian people on this first step toward victory. 14 days later, Khomeini returns to Tehran. Millions greet him at the airport. Within weeks, the 2,500-year tradition of Persian monarchy is abolished. The Pahlavi dynasty, which had ruled for 54 years, ceases to exist. But the Shah's flight was only the beginning of his family's tragedy. He would die of cancer in exile 18 months later, abandoned by the allies who once courted him. His youngest daughter would be found dead in a London hotel room, 5 times the lethal dose of sleeping pills in her system. His younger son would put a shotgun to his head in a Boston brownstone. His eldest daughter would be rejected from jobs because of her last name and retreat into a life of near total seclusion. And the crown prince, the boy born to inherit an empire, would spend the next 45 years in exile, watching his homeland from afar, waiting for a return that may never come. This is what happened to the Pahlavi bloodline after the fall of the Shah, and how the children raised in palaces became ghosts of a dynasty the Islamic Republic tried to erase. The Pahlavi dynasty began not with ancient royal lineage, but with a soldier. Reza Khan was born in 1878 in a village in northern Iran, to a family of modest means. He was illiterate when he joined the Persian Cossack Brigade at 14. By 40, he had risen to command the entire force. In 1921, he marched on Tehran and seized power. By 1925, he had convinced Parliament to depose the last Qajar Shah and crown him instead. Reza Shah was brutal, visionary, and obsessed with modernization. He built roads, railroads, factories. He banned the veil. He forced men to wear Western hats. He crushed tribal power and centralized the state. He changed the country's name from Persia to Iran. He wanted to transform a feudal backwater into a modern nation, and he largely succeeded. But in 1941, British and Soviet forces invaded Iran to secure its oil and supply routes during World War II. Reza Shah, suspected of Nazi sympathies, was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to South Africa, where he died 3 years later, broken and far from home. His 21-year-old son, Mohammad Reza, inherited the throne. The new Shah was nothing like his father. Where Reza Shah was commanding and fearless, Mohammad Reza was cautious and insecure. He was obsessed with height, wearing elevator shoes his entire life. He privately disparaged his father as a thuggish Cossack, while publicly erasing him from history. But Mohammad Reza would reign for 37 years, longer than his father. He survived assassination attempts, a CIA-backed coup that restored him to power in 1953, and waves of opposition from leftists, nationalists, and Islamists. He launched the White Revolution, a modernization program that included land reform, women's suffrage, and literacy campaigns. He hosted the most extravagant celebration in modern history at Persepolis in 1971, commemorating 2,500 years of Persian monarchy. At its height, The Shah's Iran was America's closest ally in the Middle East. The country was awash in oil money. Tehran glittered with modern architecture. The imperial court rivaled any in Europe. Mohammad Reza married 3 times. His first wife, Princess Fawzia of Egypt, gave him 1 daughter but no male heir. They divorced in 1948. His second wife, Soraya Esfandiari Bakhtiari, was beautiful but could not conceive. He divorced her in 1958, weeping as he signed the papers. His third wife was Farah Diba, a 21-year-old architecture student he met at the Iranian embassy in Paris. They married in December 1959. She was crowned Shahbanu, Empress, in 1967, a title created especially for her. She gave him what he desperately wanted, a son. Crown Prince Reza was born on October 31, 1960. The Shah pardoned 98 political prisoners in celebration. Income taxes were reduced by 20%. Cannons fired across Tehran. The dynasty finally had an heir. 3 more children followed. Princess Farinaz was born in 1963. Prince Ali Reza in 1966. Princess Layla in 1970. These children grew up in Niavaran Palace, a compound of gardens and pavilions in northern Tehran. They had private tutors, servants, bodyguards. Crown Prince Reza was sent to a special school on the palace grounds. He played football, supported the Istiglal Club, and dreamed of becoming a pilot like his father. Layla, the youngest, was her father's favorite. She was 9 years old when the revolution came. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 did not erupt overnight. It built over months of protests, strikes, and massacres. The Shah's secret police, Savak, had tortured and killed thousands over the decades. The religious establishment despised his secularism. The left despised his alliance with America. The middle class despised his corruption. By late 1978, millions were marching in the streets, united only by hatred of the monarchy. The Shah vacillated. He could have ordered the army to crush the protests. Instead, he liberalized, then cracked down, then liberalized again. Each decision backfired. By January 1979, even his American allies had concluded there was no way to save him. On January 16th, the imperial family boarded the Boeing 707. They flew first to Egypt, where President Anwar Sadat welcomed them, then to Morocco, then to the Bahamas, then to Mexico. The Shah was looking for a country that would take him permanently. None would. In October 1979, President Jimmy Carter allowed the Shah to enter the United States for cancer treatment. It was a fatal miscalculation. On November 4th, Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage, demanding the Shah's return. The hostage crisis would last 444 days and destroy Carter's presidency. The Shah left America for Panama, then returned to Egypt. His cancer was advancing rapidly. On July 27, 1980, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi died in a Cairo military hospital. He was 60 years old. He was buried with full military honors at Al-Rifa'i Mosque in Cairo, the same mosque where his ex-father-in-law, King Farouk of Egypt, was interred. His body remains there today, far from the land he once ruled. Empress Farah, suddenly a widow at 41, was left with 4 children in a foreign country. No home, no income, except what they had brought with them, and the knowledge that her husband's enemies would hunt them for the rest of their lives. The family eventually settled in the United States, first on Long Island, then in various locations around the East Coast. Farah divided her time between the U.S. and Paris. She maintained the bearing of an empress, attending royal weddings and funerals across Europe, giving interviews, writing her memoirs. But her children were not so resilient. The trauma of exile, the loss of their father, and the weight of their name would destroy 2 of them. Princess Layla was 9 when she left Iran. She barely remembered the palaces. What she remembered was the running, the sudden departures, the strange countries, the armed guards, the knowledge that people wanted her family dead. She attended school in New York and Connecticut, then studied at Brown University. She was beautiful, fluent in 4 languages, and briefly modeled for Valentino in Paris. But beneath the surface, she was falling apart. Layla suffered from anorexia nervosa, bulimia, chronic fatigue, and severe depression. Her mother later said the trauma of exile had broken something in her that never healed. She drifted between Greenwich and Paris, never settling, never finding a purpose. On June 10, 2001, Layla was found dead in her room at the Leonard Hotel in London. She was 31 years old. The autopsy revealed more than 5 times the lethal dose of Seconal, a barbiturate, in her system. A non-lethal amount of cocaine was also present. The coroner ruled it a probable suicide. She was buried at the Passy Cemetery in Paris, far from Iran, far from her father's grave in Cairo. Empress Farah said her daughter had died of sadness. Prince Ali Reza, the younger son, seemed more stable. He was intellectual, reserved, passionate about ancient Persian history. He earned degrees from Princeton and Columbia, then enrolled in a PhD program at Harvard, studying ancient Iranian languages. He lived quietly in a Boston brownstone he purchased for $2 million. But Ali Reza carried his own burdens. He had been close to Layla. Her death shattered him. Friends said he was never the same afterward. He grew increasingly isolated, rarely leaving his home, struggling with depression that deepened year after year. On January 4, 2011, Ali Reza Pahlavi shot himself with a shotgun in his Boston apartment. He was 44 years old. His housekeeper found the body and called the police. Suffolk County. Authorities confirmed it was self-inflicted. The family statement spoke of his immense sorrow over losing his father and sister. Although he struggled for years to overcome his sorrow, it read, he finally succumbed. He was buried in Massachusetts. Another Pahlavi far from home. Another suicide that the family blamed on the revolution. Princess Farinaz, the eldest daughter, chose a different path, disappearance. She earned a master's degree in child psychology from Columbia and tried to find work at international aid agencies like UNICEF. According to her mother, she was rejected because of her name. Today she lives in New York, rarely seen in public, never giving interviews. She has never married. She has no children. She pays attention to events in Iran but takes no public role. She is 62 years old, a princess with no kingdom, living a life of deliberate anonymity. Crown Prince Reza has taken the opposite approach. He has spent 45 years positioning himself as the leader of Iranian opposition in exile. He was 18 when his father died. On his 20th birthday, he declared himself Reza Shah II, the rightful heir to the peacock throne. He married Yasmin Etemad Amini, an Iranian-American, in 1986. They have 3 daughters, Noor, Iman, and Farah. Reza lives in a suburb of Washington, D.C. He gives speeches, appears on news programs, and calls for regime change in Iran. During the 2022 protests following the death of Mahsa Amini, he emerged as a prominent voice for the opposition. He called for a global day of action that drew hundreds of thousands of protesters in cities around the world. But his position is complicated. Many Iranians remember the Shah's dictatorship and want no return to monarchy. The notorious Evin prison, symbol of Islamic Republic tyranny today, was built by the Shah to hold his own political prisoners. Savak tortured dissidents long before the mullahs did. For these Iranians, Reza Pahlavi represents not hope, but a return to a different kind of oppression. Others see him differently. To the generation born after the revolution, the Shah is ancient history. They know only the Islamic Republic's failures, the corruption, the repression, the economic collapse. Some wave pre-revolutionary flags at protests. Some chant, Reza Shah, bless your soul. In 2026, President Donald Trump said Reza Pahlavi appeared very nice, but questioned whether he could mobilize enough support inside Iran to take power. It remains an open question. Empress Farah Pahlavi is 86 years old. She divides her time between Paris and the United States, where her surviving children and grandchildren live. She attends royal events across Europe, appearing at weddings and funerals alongside the monarchs who still have their thrones. She gives interviews about her husband, her country, and her hopes for Iran's future. In a 2025 interview, she said her return to Iran will take place soon. She expressed admiration for protesters and declared, "There is no turning back." She has outlived her husband by 45 years. She has buried 2 of her 4 children. She has watched her homeland transform into something unrecognizable, ruled by clerics who curse her husband's memory. And she still believes, against all evidence and despite all loss, that she will see Tehran again before she dies. The Pahlavi dynasty lasted 54 years. It produced 2 shahs, 1 empress, and a handful of princes and princesses who scattered across the world after 1979. Today, the family lives in exile, connected by grief and a shared name that opens some doors and closes others. Crown Prince Reza has 3 daughters but no sons. His eldest, Princess Noor, was born in 1992. She has appeared alongside her grandmother in interviews, speaking of the family's hope for Iran. If the Pahlavi line continues into the next generation, it will be through women. The dynasty that once required a male heir to survive may find its future in daughters. The palaces still stand in Tehran. Niavaran is a museum now, open to tourists who walk through the rooms where the Shah's children once played. Sadabad is a museum. The crown jewels are locked in the central bank vault, displayed to visitors who pay a few dollars to gaze at the treasures of a vanished dynasty. And in cemeteries across 3 continents, the Pahlavis rest far from home. The Shah in Cairo, Layla in Paris, Ali Reza in Massachusetts. None of them in the country they were born to rule. None of them in the land whose soil the Shah carried with him on that final flight from Tehran. The Pahlavis are not the only dynasty that lost everything in the 20th century. The Romanovs ruled Russia for 300 years until the night Tsar Nicholas and his entire family were led into a basement in Yekaterinburg. If you want to see what happened to the Romanovs after the revolution, watch our video on the fate of the Tsar's family after the execution.